Hello everyone! Today I want to talk about my impressions on the first two episodes of the Walking Dead video game. This one is called Season 3 of Walking Dead, but it's also called New Frontier, made by Telltale Games. Telltale Games is a unique developer who has been making point-and-click games for quite a while. As of recently, they've gotten really big and have been increasing their budget on games significantly. Some people even say that they make AAA point-and-click games. When I say point-and-click games, I mean a game that focuses heavily on the narrative aspects of the game. You can move your character around, examine objects, complete puzzles to move on with the storyline, but the majority of the game is found within the dialogue and the cutscenes of the game. I used to play many Telltale games when I was younger, as early as 8 years ago. There was actually 3 seasons of the Sam and Max game. There was Tales of Monkey Island, The Wolf Among Us, Minecraft, Tales from the Borderlands, and the Batman game. Now you see Telltale Games getting rights from very popular franchises for their new games. I'm really happy for them. Unfortunately, there's a big difference between what I would call the old Telltale Games and the new Telltale Games. The new Telltale Games have a lot more detail and better graphics. Unfortunately, they're exceedingly short. I mean to say that you can only get an hour or 2 of gameplay for each of those episodes, with 5 of the episodes costing that of a retail game. Some argue that these kinds of games have a lot of replayability, and they do. Some choices will offer a completely different path depending on what your choices are. The last game I played, the Batman game, no spoilers, has different cutscenes in the last 2 episodes depending on the order you choose to take down the antagonists of the game. But to be fair, a lot of the choices are non-existent, and the game likes to give you what I call the illusion of choice. If you're new, you don't need to know anything about the show to play the game. It's sad actually, because a lot of my friends have told me they were watching the show and they didn't want the game to spoil it, but that's completely not true. Sometimes I've seen it the other way around as well, and it's a big misconception I feel the developers didn't really address when making the game. But you don't need to worry, the game and the show are completely independent of each other. You can actually carry your choices over between games. For example, if you switch between consoles and play the game on the PC, you can actually link up your save files using the internet and by making a free account on their website, and that's a really big positive. That means you can actually play the previous games before this, because there's 2 seasons of games before this, and you can actually import your decisions from that game into this one. Unfortunately, if you make a lot of interesting and unique decisions from the previous games, the game will actually throw a bunch of plot points to make sure that you'll end up in the same situation as the chosen path. Sometimes you'll see that, oh, this character that was heavily featured in the previous game actually dies within 5 minutes of the new game. That's the kind of reward you might get for importing your save, because they want to change the diversity of the characters, they want to change the cast up a bit. So as you play between the games, you'll see completely different groups of people each time with each game, with the sole exception of a character or 2 maybe reappearing. Many people were very disappointed in this because the original Walking Dead game had a DLC called 400 Days, where you're supposed to play as the characters who would be appearing in the next game. But when you actually played the next game, you'd only have maybe 2 to 5 minutes of screen time for those characters. It's a big disappointment. It's like playing the previous games and spending your money on that company, and you only get like cameos of the characters instead of actual decisions that matter. So you'll see these developers get a lot of criticism from that, but it can't be helped. If all of your choices actually mattered in the game, you'd get too many different paths to develop for. Like, if you were a game developer and you chose to spend too much time developing one path, maybe not everyone would get to see that path, because maybe all of the players would see a completely different path. I played through the most 2 recent episodes of The Walking Dead New Frontier video game. I played through them really quickly, and they're quite a lot of fun. I like the new Telltale Games. Problem is that they can be completed really quickly, like really quickly. In my walkthrough of the game, I examined most of the optional objects in the game, and I explored most of the optional paths. I was able to complete the 2 episodes in 2 hours and 45 minutes. That means that each episode will last a bit less than an hour and a half. I lied a bit when I said that the show and the games aren't connected. They are connected, but only very slightly so. Sometimes you'll see a character from the show appear in the game, so you might already know how that character behaves, and you might know if that character is trustworthy or not simply from watching the show. So that might spoil the game a little bit. In the second episode, for example, you meet a stranger who's actually a character from the show, and at the time I had completed the episode, I noticed that, because when you play these games, they show statistics of the decisions made by the player base. and I saw that a very, very exceedingly high proportion, like over 90% of the people, trusted the character and chose not to tie him up like you would a regular stranger. It's because people who watched the show already knew that he was a good character. Otherwise, I noticed that on the forum, and in a lot of the fan videos being made, people seem to be a bit disappointed in this game. And it's unavoidable for such a long-running franchise like The Walking Dead. Since Season 2 of Telltale's Walking Dead, you had about 4 endings, so that means that these game developers, they had to put in a few cutscenes for each situation. They had to put in 4 different sets of cutscenes so that you could put the game onto one path in the end, which is fine. But I'm not spoiling anything from saying this, but watching a character that you spent the whole game with, and then you play the new game and suddenly they die within 5 minutes of the new game, it seems kind of silly, and it's sad because they wrote themselves into that situation. Know that you won't be controlling the character in the previous game. The character from the previous game, what was her name? Orange? Tangerine? Kumquat? No, Clementine. So yeah, you don't control Clementine in this game. She'll be a supporting character instead. They wanted to ease the player into a different character instead, and sometimes change is good. So you'll be examining all the objects and completing the puzzles with the new protagonist, Javier. He'll make a few witty remarks throughout the game. There definitely are a lot of fun choices in these first 2 episodes, but generally, the same thing will happen no matter what you do. There are definitely some really emotional scenes within the first 2 episodes as well, one of which will probably surprise a lot of gamers, but I'm not going to be spoiling that. If you're familiar with the Walking Dead series now, you'll know that the humans in the universe are a lot worse than the actual zombies themselves, which is pretty funny. So you'll see a lot of tense group versus group situations when you play through the game. Unfortunately, and one of my major criticisms with the game is that there's barely any choices that allow you to take a non-lethal approach. The game will always force you into confrontations quickly. Although the choices aren't always present, I like to think of the modern Telltale games as movies with a few choices in between. Overall, these games, they're a really nice experience to enjoy. I think that, because if you haven't played them recently, there's actually a new option. You can have what you call group decisions. So each time your character needs to make a decision, you can actually invite a group of people with you, and you can have a vote based on what you want that character to do. So when I played Batman earlier this year, I actually invited some friends over so that we could all enjoy the experience, and it's a lot more fun than going through the game alone. I can see a lot of great, amazing, and intuitive new ideas coming from Telltale Games. To summarize though, so far so good. The second episode leaves off at a very big cliffhanger. I won't spoil it, but I can't wait to see what happens next. Please check out our channel for more videos and for a walkthrough of the game in 1080p quality.